Hey, good evening or good morning or good afternoon. I don't know if that, do you say good afternoon? Yeah, that's a word. Whatever time you're listening to this podcast, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. It's considered TV, right? I'm guessing. We're live on the YouTube. Live on the YouTube. Not in Belarus, though. Told for paper that you have to flatten it before you receive. I'm guessing they don't crush everything before they're collecting paper. Like 3D objects get routed away. If you leave your paper like a box, if you leave it assembled, the likelihood that it's going to be the back goes down. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to the people of packaging. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Wow, the lighting in here is a little bit rough. I found a room back here I'm at the TLMI show, which is the Tag and Label Manufacturers Institute, which is labels and packaging printing. Had a couple of really amazing talks this morning, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the Packaging Today show this morning with Corey Novelio, but because I was in the sessions and I just wanted to come on here, report a little bit about some just interesting things. So I found this room. Look, this is like the behind the scenes. This is where all the magic happens. It's like the most quiet room here in this resort. We're at the La Cantera Resort and Spa in San Antonio, Texas. And we just had our morning session. And so I thought, well, I'll set up my gear, come on and talk a little bit about some of the highlights, quite frankly, some of the even low lights. I mean, they're not low in the sense it was just information. So there were two presenters, and I've got some notes here I just wanted to share a little bit about. There's still some things happening, and there's some networking stuff going on, but I wanted to come on and talk with you here on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So if you are able to jump on here, I think it's around lunchtime on the East Coast. So I thought maybe some people would be able to join. But we had economist Alan Bolu, and Alan has been speaking at the TLMI show for, I think this was his 16th year, and he just gives economic outlooks. He is retiring. And if you have not heard him speak, I recommend looking him up. There's a recording. He's written a book. I don't remember what the title of his book is, but very, very insightful stuff from Alan. And so I thought I'd go over some key notes here based on his economic forecast. He was in the thing I really appreciated about it was at the beginning, he said, I'm going to talk about how policies are impacting the economy, not how politics are. And while there are politicians who have policies, he's like, I'm not here to make moral judgments on what's right or wrong. I'm just here to tell you what is actually happening and what we predict is going to happen. So some things of note for our industry that I thought were interesting. We're expecting positive economic growth from 2025 through 2029. That global economies will experience growth through 2029, and the U.S. is going to benefit from increased exports and manufacturing. I did not know that the U.S. is the second largest exporter of manufactured goods, and we import our number one importer, or where we get most of our stuff from, is not China. Didn't know that. China is number 3 on the list currently. Number 1 is Europe. So who knew? Number 2 is Mexico. Number 3 is China. And number 4 is Canada. We expect inflation is going to persist and interest rates will rise throughout from now until 2030. We'll get to 2030 here in a second. Federal debt and spending that the government is going to continue to spend. And, he talked a little bit about like, Doge and some of these things that are happening and and he's like, at the end of the day, tariffs and Doge and these sorts of things, they do have impacts. But the trends are not going to stop because of those impacts going into 2030. He talked about China and that we see the data on their population decline and that they are a country that's in a debt crisis. I think he mentioned that there was like 1.2 billion empty condos in the country of China. And so we should expect for the amount of goods that we are importing from China to decline, and that we should be just on the lookout anytime there's a country in crisis. Oftentimes, war can be a way to try to get out of that crisis, so that we should be mindful of that. Um, there's potential for conflict. He says that tariffs could obviously increase prices, but right now the biggest thing that could likely trigger a recession and a full-on depression into the 2030s is, in fact, the uncertainty and our debt obligations as a country, just the uncertainty in the supply chains and things like that. But he did say he thinks the second half of 2025 should be pretty solid. So, hey, if you're just tuning in, I'm reporting here. I'm here at the TLMI event in San Antonio, Texas. Got my little badge here, media badge. And I'm talking about the talk that Alan Bolu gave, Beaulieu. If you're not following him on LinkedIn, go check out his book, go check out his talks. He's a tremendous communicator. All right, continuing on, we'll have a labor shortage in the U.S., particularly if deportation and immigration laws continue. We don't have enough workers in the country. We didn't have the birth rate to support our current labor shortage. So we should also see wage increases. Labor costs should be rising. He predicts 28% through the end of the decade. And that millennials will be dominating the workforce. He did say something interesting about millennials when he was talking about how can you prepare for the 2030s. And he said, listen to millennials, because they tend to have a mindset towards efficiency, and that efficiency is going to help can be something to help overcome, labor shortages that we're going to have here in our country. He said the U.S. continues to be the #1 receiver of foreign investments, and he said, so we can tell the current state is foreign people or people outside of the U.S. Continue to bet big on the U.S. being the economic force going forward and not other countries. Some other things he said, 2026, he believes, is the optimal time to buy and or sell a business. If you're going to buy a home, he said, before 2026, interest rates will continue to rise through the end of the decade. Efficiency is key. The M&A market will be strong in 25 and 26, but will likely slow down. We'll continue to see a reshoring and a manufacturing growth here in the U.S. And then the bad news was the early 2030s, according to his economic model, are not going to be great. And he's been saying this now for a few years to us here at the TLMI, just in the industry, at the organization. 2030 through about 2035, there's likely to be a pretty solid recession and depression. And so, again, I'm not the economist. I'm just the guy with the microphone reporting what he talked about. But I just thought it was interesting, and I wanted to be able to share, while it was still fresh in my mind, what it was that he was talking about. Said to plan for inflation, optimize workforce efficiency, use things like AI. He said, do we need to do this? Does a person need to do this? And if not, it's okay to invest in those kinds of tools. I'll get to AI here in a second when I talk about Corey from NAPCO and what he talked about. Diversify your investments, just be prepared for a downturn in the 2030s. But he expects there to be, for the people who are prepared, so we can be prepared now, who are prepared for the recession and depression in the early 2030s into the mid 2030s, there will be a recovery. And that any time that there is a depression, if you can be prepared for it, then you can do things like, you can buy the vacation homes that people can't afford. There's opportunities in that. And so I just thought that was interesting. Like I said, I'm not the economist. I'm not the one who's looking at all the data. I'm just here reporting it. So huge thanks to Alan. He has been a tremendous blessing to us, to our industry. And I'm just really appreciative of everything that he has done. He's very funny. He's incredibly gifted as a communicator. And so I'm bummed that we won't be able to hear him talk. We won't be able to hear him talk at the TLMI event. So the second presenter, let me see here if I got his name, is Corey. Let's see. Oh shoot, I didn't My bad, Corey. Corey, I think it's Frankor. So I apologize if I got your last name wrong, but he talked about the state of digital printing. And I'm actually going to be covering this a little bit more when I speak at the FTA conference in Pittsburgh as well. But Corey has a great resource available if you want to go look at what's happening in the digital printing space. You absolutely can. Hang on, is my picture even showing here? Hang on. I can't tell if you're watching this, if you're like the one person watching this and you can see my picture on the screen. It's fine if there's no video, but it doesn't. StreamYard's been a little bit funky lately, so I'm not quite sure. Maybe there's just an audio recording and I'm wasting my time going live, and that's fine. But some interesting data I thought from Corey. There continues to be an increase in their study between brands and digital printing or just printing manufacturers. A combination of what we'll call conventional, offset, flexography, rotogravure, that type of printing, and digital printing, with digital printing continue to grow specifically in the label printing industry. And the label printing industry has an incredible amount of growth. We see this in inkjet, in toner. So companies like Domino, Durst, HP, Zycon, I'm sure I'm missing somebody else. So apologies. Mark Andy has a new digital press out. These companies are seeing growth, and that's being pushed and driven by brands. And it's funny because the things that they want, the reason they like digital printing is short lead times and cost. That's there's kind of the niche stuff like security and personalization and things of that nature, but at the end of the day, it's really being driven by the same things. And to be candid, those things can be driven if you can drive out the efficiencies per Allen stock, or if you can drive out inefficiencies and create efficiencies. You can do the same thing with traditional press formats. But then he asked a brand, what do you look for in a printer? And here were some essentials. It was 46% said it's essential that they can produce variable printed packaging. 46%. This was 131 different brand owners. 42% said that they can provide online ordering capabilities, which I thought was super interesting. And then offers production level digital printing is 39%. So as you can tell, brands are less concerned with, do you have a digital printing capability? They're more concerned of, can you provide the digital experience for us? And I think that that's important. We need to remember as printed packaging people that people don't really just want to buy packaging because it's cool, right? They want to buy packaging for what it's going to deliver to their brand. And I think this came out in the study. Another thing that was interesting when it came to some of the numbers, which one was this? This was, hang on, that one got a little blurry. Sorry. Oh, and then where are converters seeing inefficiencies change over time between jobs, which obviously digital can help with. Keeping up with increased SKU proliferation was number 2. So brands are leveraging the fact that there's digital printing in the market and they're able to iterate and create new SKUs. I think that's pretty critical and important. Just an inefficiency of older equipment, workflow optimization in pre-press printing and finishing. I think that one should be higher. Honestly, I think that's a huge part. And then slowdowns or bottlenecks in finishing. Another thing that per Allen's talk as well is with the labor changing when it comes to printing. Oftentimes it's easier to train somebody to use a digital press than it is a traditional press. And so, I think that is another key component. One thing I just shared here on LinkedIn was he looked at brand owners, how they value sustainability in packaging. And the thing I found interesting about this is it is essential that packaging printing companies have both of these things: a strong grasp of current packaging regulations and legislation. 37% of the brands said that that is absolutely essential. And also, they are able to provide documented sustainability information. So just let that sit for a second. According to this data from NAPCO, 37% of brands want you to not only talk about it, but you also got to be about it, right? Like you can't say, oh, we're super sustainable, or we do this, or we do that. They're asking for the data to back it up. And I'm wearing my SpecRite shirt. Obviously, I have talked a lot about what SpecRite does, but I don't want to continue to miss the fact that brands are asking and demanding for you to know what's happening and to be able to report, to help them report on what's going on. A lot of brands, especially the small and mid-sized brands, they don't have packaging departments. They don't have people focused on this. They're looking to us to help them out. And so I kind of want to leave it at that, right? Like as we kind of mash these two together, I know this is it's a label converters meeting, which to a lot of people maybe doesn't sound all that exciting. I love it. I love coming to TLMI events. I think my first one was 9 or 10 years ago. I think it's amazingly fascinating because labels are packaging. They just are. And I'm going to have a few like fun stand-up interviews and stuff like that on LinkedIn. But at the end of the day, we have to remember that data and technology can help drive efficiencies, so long as it's not just data and technology for the sake of having data and technology, right? Like they have to be done with a purpose. I had a great conversation with some folks last night at the dinner and the networking event about like CRM and how sometimes a CRM can be really helpful. And other times, if we're asking salespeople to do more work, then it can be detrimental, because if the CRM is about the salesperson being more efficient, then it's great. If it's about the managers having the data that they want to have to be able to look at making decisions, it may not be very efficient for the sales rep, which could hurt revenue, right? The same sorts of things for production, the same sorts of things for sustainability. It just goes on down the list, right? Like you have to be aware and honest, not only about your data, but how it's collected and how it's shared. And that efficiency, if you can lean into it over the next, call it 3, 4, 5 years, is really going to help prepare not only you as an individual, but it's going to help prepare and launch your business into some pretty tough economic times, again, according to Alan Bolu. So that's all I got. That's my report here from this morning. I've been talking for 18 minutes. Like I said, I don't know if my photo or if my video showed up here. StreamYard has been really funky. If not, I'll make sure to get this pushed out. Please go ahead and subscribe to the People of Packaging podcast. You can go to packagingisawesome.com, subscribe there on my Substack. You'll get notified whenever these things come out. I'm going to make sure this gets put out right away because I'm not sure if it actually went live or not. But I appreciate y'all listening. Tomorrow, I said y'all because I'm in Texas. Do you see what I did there? Tomorrow, I'll have another report just kind of on what I'm finding and what's going on. Please be sure to stay tuned to the content here on LinkedIn. I'm going to have some fun, hopefully some fun stand-up interviews with some folks. I appreciate y'all for listening. And remember, go subscribe. And packaging is awesome.